Wargaming have introduced a brand new premium for World of Tanks console, and today's video is going to look at all of the update news including this brand new tank, and hopefully you guys will get a good understanding of what's come this week. And of course, let me know what you think if you've played the game, if you've bought the tank as well. And so let's get right into it. So first things first, the new Chieftain Hybrid, the 120, and this is of course a Cold War vehicle. So straight away we have a brand new Cold War premium. It's been kind of lacking in terms of new Cold War vehicles in the last month or so. So it's nice to see that they've started to bring them back into the game for those of you that do play Cold War. But what does this tank actually have? Well, tank characteristics wise, it very much looks like a traditional chieftain, as you'd probably expect by the name. It doesn't take a brain box to work that one out. But what is this tank in particular? Well, this tank is a slightly buffed version of what you would see on World War II at tier 10. And this is essentially a higher hit point. It's faster. It's got way better gun statistics than you would have on World War II as well. So this tank could actually be very, very powerful in the right hands on Cold War. So I'm looking forward to actually doing a full review of the tank, and we'll be doing that tomorrow, I expect, as of the recording and publishing of this video. It will be Wednesday for you guys when you actually get to have a look at this video, in particular on this tank in general. But the key thing is we'll give a good rundown, and of course all of the extras and ops and challenges that Wargaming have released as well. So first things first, we have the silver bonus. So this is pretty much a key of most people's buying choices within Cold War, not only because the tank is good, but also does it have a good silver bonus, and this one certainly does, 55%. So it's slightly higher than your average, but it isn't the highest silver earning potential that I've seen, and you're probably not going to be able to earn a ridiculous amount of silver, way more than anything else, but at least it might be able to compete with the FE4211 maybe, potentially, but not entirely sure about that. Either way, so 55% silver bonus, we've got a 10% bonus to Commander XP, you've got a 20% vehicle XP bonus, so for those of you who like converting XP on tanks into free XP, might be useful, but the hit points, 2,950 is okay, it's nothing too outrageous, but it's definitely good. You've got 1,000 horsepower of your engine, which means that your power to weight ratio is actually surprisingly decent. It's nothing outrageous, once again, it's very good. But yeah, just a very, very solid power to weight ratio, 22, and you've got a top speed of 65 kilometers an hour, which is fairly fast. It's going to be mobile, and you're going to be able to maintain that speed fairly quickly. You've got a hull traverse of 44 degrees a second, a turret traverse of 38 degrees a second, gun depression 10 degrees as you'd expect from British tanks in the game. You've got 20 degrees of elevation, which is fine. Your penetration values are very good as well. 418 on the standard, 483 on the premium, meaning you can pretty much deal with most things that you're going to come up against. Damage here, as opposed to the standard chieftain that you'd see in World War II, is 530. But where this tank comes into kind of play is in the aim time and accuracy. You've got 1.7 second aim time, so it's very, very easy to lock on to targets. You've got very good accuracy as well, so you're not really going to be missing a whole ton with this tank unless maybe you yourself miss. You've got rate of fire of 7.5, meaning that your damage per minute is about 4,000. Remember that this is the base value, and if you're looking at all of the bonuses that you can put onto a chieftain in Cold War, then you're probably looking at about 5,000 damage per minute, roughly, if you're using advanced loader and if you're using rapid loading as part of the equipment and crew skills. So yeah, really looking quite nice for the chieftain. You've also got a reload of 8 seconds, so obviously as with the DPM going up, if you're using the boost to your DPM, you'll probably see this come down to about 7 seconds roughly. The max ammo capacity, you're not limited by rounds in this thing, so you've got 50 rounds, so maximum damage you can deal is like 26,500 damage, so I don't think anyone's going to have trouble in that department. You have got 1,530 shell velocity, so you do have APDS rounds as your standard, so pretty fast. And then your premium rounds are APFSDS, which is quite nice, with 1,530 as well. So they're pretty much APCR rounds as standard and also as your premium round. And then your third round is Hesh rounds, which have 660 shell velocity, so they're fairly slow, but they do get 290 pen. So if you're coming up against some of the light tanks in the game, or you're coming up against the mediums or the kind of bog standard low tier medium tanks that are in Cold War right now, then you're going to be able to easily pen them, especially if you're fighting at close range and aiming for weak points. Then the Hesh rounds may actually be a little bit of a novel and secret technique to boost up that damage even more, so you can deal nearly 700 total damage with the Hesh rounds. So really, really nice, and essentially they're just a good version of a HE round in this thing, so really, really nice to see. Your view range 490 meters, so good as well. And of course you can boost this up potentially to maybe get some spotting damage as well if you're using advanced optics, or maybe you're using the commander skills to boost that up even further as well. So yeah, overall this tank statistically looks very, very solid, and as you'd expect from a Chieftain, it is a solid tank on World War II, and you can see it just in the kind of screen here where you can see what it looks like. I mean, it's very bog standard of what you'd expect, but I think that this tank is actually going to be very good. Of course, you have to wait to the full tank review maybe before you end up purchasing it, because it is going to cost you an arm and a leg. It will cost you about £35 right now if you want just the base version. And if you want the fully upgraded version, you're looking at 16,500 gold, or the equivalent of about £45, somewhere in that region. So very expensive. And in all honesty, I would always go for the base version. The higher up in the bundles you get, you kind of devalue in terms of what is really worth it. I mean, you end up getting throne premium time, which is not good in terms of how much they're going to be charging you for it. I'm not entirely sure if Wargaming charge it on the 7-day kind of exclusive price of buying 7 days, or whether Wargaming charge you 7 lots of 1 day of premium, and then they say, oh look, you've got a 20% savings, but actually the savings isn't really there, because if you were to just go out and buy 7 days as opposed to 7 lots of 1 day, you might have already saved yourself, 1,000 gold or whatever it might be. I mean, that's probably an overestimation, but yeah, just take that into account when you are deciding this, as well as the fact that I'm not entirely sure if Wargaming price the vehicle XP boosters in the same way, because you can buy a bundle of 20 times 3 vehicle XP boosters for, I don't know, a nominal value. This isn't exact, but it might be, 1,000 gold, for example. I know it's more than that, but they might charge you individually for the boosters. So 20 lots of the, just if you were to buy one, as opposed to if you were to buy a bundle, which is usually a savings. So just be aware when Wargaming say 20% savings, because a lot of the time they're not necessarily lying, but they're not telling you the entire truth. So don't go out of your way to do it if you're not actually wanting the tank and all of the stuff that comes with it as well. And remember that they charge you for the silver price as opposed to the actual equipment. So you basically right here pay 2,000 gold to be able to get 1.5 million silver. So whether you really think about that in terms of if you want to buy the top bundle or the middle or the bottom, you could save yourself some money there if you are going to purchase the tank. But overall, I don't think it's going to be a bad one, and I actually am looking forward to trying this out in my own time. But we've got the other vehicles that were released or re-released, and these are the 2 new Mercenary contracts. So if you haven't actually picked up a contract at the moment, then maybe you want to go in and purchase or sign up for the contract of the Centrifuge. It won't cost you any money, so these are free if you can complete them, that is. And you can pick up the Centrifuge or the T26E3 Eagle 7, both of which are fairly decent. I mean, the Centrifuge here, it has a lot of spaced armor. It's your typical mercenary tank where they basically take the best parts of varying different tier tanks, shove them all into one, give it some spaced armor, and then say, that's a completely balanced tank, and I have no idea why it wouldn't be balanced, but that's Wargaming. I mean, it is what it is. It's going to take you a ton of XP to be able to get it. I mean, like 250,000 XP or somewhere in that region just by I mean, I could go through and work it out individually, but I would say about 200,000 XP to be able to get it. Similarly, the higher the tier of the tank, you have to basically go through even more stages. And yeah, you can see here the the Eagle 7, it was going to take you probably 500,000 silver there or thereabouts to be able to pick this one up. And to be honest with you, it's probably not worth it. I mean, the tank is very good, but it isn't certainly a tank that I would focus on if I did have some XP to grind out on things like the Machine or the Tusk or the top tier contracts if you haven't already earned those. So highly recommend doing those first. But yeah, it's nice to see the mercenaries back in the game. And then we have the Lunar New Year's sales and earn challenge. So there is another earn challenge, and this one is essentially the year of the rabbit. You can actually get your way to the TANK or the Type 62 light tank. So you'll have a look at the earn operation where you can get the free tank first, because that's probably more interesting to you guys than the sales that they've got going on. But essentially what you have to do is it's a point operation. It's down to how many XP or how much XP you get in a game. You can earn 1,000 or more XP in any number of battles. You'll get 1 point. Remember, on your daily double, you might be able to get 3,000 XP in one game. So you'll get 3 points. If you were then to play 10 lots of your first tank of the day and get your first win, you could get 30 points pretty quickly. Remember that premium bonuses also count towards this. And I actually think that times 5 XP boosters also count towards this. So if you really wanted to like rapidly go through and use up some of your XP boosters, then maybe now would be the time to do it. But just double check. Don't go using like 100 boosters and then realize that it didn't actually count. Just double check, because you never know with wargaming. But I do think that the XP boosters do indeed actually give you more points per game, as if you were to get, 5 lots of 1,000 XP. If you had a times 5 XP booster, you'd get 5 points as opposed to just the 1 that you normally would. So it's kind of pay to win in that regards. But you can see here all of the emblems, and you can get some boosters along the way, and you earn points and points and points. And if you want to be able to get the free vehicles, you have to get 500 points in total. And you can pick up the Type 62 light tank, you can pick up the TANK. And if I was to say which one I would like to actually have the most, if I had to pick between the two, I would actually argue the Type 62. But bear in mind that it's probably the a tank that requires a little bit more thought process. And if you're like newer to the game, or you're someone that hasn't played a ton of World of Tanks console, or you're just after a more casual, fun, enjoyable tank, then I'd highly recommend the TANK. It's just because I'm a little bit of a Chinese connoisseur on World of Tanks, and the Type 62 is a kind of interesting one. And I absolutely loved the Chinese light tanks in the game, even though they are kind of probably one of the worst light tanks tier for tier in the game. Not that the Type 62 is, but the Type 62 is actually a decent one. But yeah, just bear that in mind. At the end of the day, both tanks are good. You could pick either one, and I'm sure you'd be very happy with your choice. There's no real absolute terrible tank in these two, and not one absolutely overpowered and the other one being like okay. They're fairly well matched up in terms of what you want. Obviously, one's a tier 8, one's a tier 7, so choose whichever one you have, and if you have one over the other, just get the one that you don't have, or alternatively get the one that you do have, and you'll be rewarded the silver equivalent for picking that tank again. So what about these sales? Because we glossed over them a minute ago, but there are usually some decent sales from World of Tanks around this time, and the Lunar New Year bundles are actually decent to a degree if you're going to spend some gold on the game. But the first one is Battle Spotters. You can get the M41D light tank and the Type 64, both of which very solid tanks. 5,000 gold, it's very cheap, it's 50% off. You can't go wrong if you want either of them. Eastern Punishers, you've got the Yahtzee WZ-121GFT, so this is the Chinese tank destroyer at tier 8, which is very good, as well as the WZ-111, which is probably a bit lackluster, but it's still an okay tank, don't get me wrong, but 13,000 gold is quite expensive for this, and I probably wouldn't go out of my way to purchase that one. The classic types, you've got the Type 59 and the Type 62 for 6,500 gold. I mean, considering that they literally have better versions of the Type 59 in the Type 59-2 and the King Dragon and various different Type 59 versions in the game that have a 390 alpha damage gun, the Type 59's been left in a pretty bad place, so this bundle probably not the one you want to go for. Then you've got modern type, so you can get the Type 59D or the Type 80, 12,500 gold. These are of course Cold War vehicles. I mean, it's down to you whether you want these. I'm not really going to comment a whole lot on that one. Then you've got Chinese Zodiac set, which is essentially just emblems that you can pick up for 2,100 gold. Very expensive. I mean, if you really enjoy emblems that much, I guess you could get it, but then I'd much rather just pick the emblem that I want in particular and then buy that one multiple times rather than have a ton of them and a savings, blah, blah, blah. And talking about individuals, you can buy every single emblem in the bundle for 30% off individually. So yeah, I'd probably just say go and buy the emblems on their own if you really do want them. But that is the sales. I mean, premium tanks wise, pretty decent. They've got a bit of a diverse range here in terms of Cold War and World War II. And of course, there are only so many Chinese premiums in the game anyway. So it'll be nice to see those. And of course, if you've been watching the Chinese heavy tanks, and I highly recommend you actually do have a look. We've got a few replays on the PC channel that I've got, and I'll link that in the comment section down below. I'll pin it so that you guys can have a look at the PC channel. If you are interested in that content and you want to see the new Chinese heavy tanks, then they'll be there. Of course, they are rocket boosters for some unbeknownst reason to anyone on World of Tanks, but there you go. And that's basically the Lunar New Year sales and the free earn operation. But what else do we have in this week? Well, you can see here multiple contents that we've already covered. We've also got a Cold War matchmaking test, but we'll cover that in the patch notes that Wargaming have provided in just a second, so stay tuned for that because it's kind of relevant for the Cold War ones of you. And then the January tank of the month is the Falcon T92, so you can pick this one up for $9.99, I believe. Yes, it is, and you get some premium. I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't go out of my way to purchase that. Then you've got the weekly sale, so you can pick up some XP boosters and the HMH FV305, the tier 8 artillery premium. And yeah, I don't really know whether I would go out of my way to purchase it, but this is what it looks like. It's basically a tier 8 Burt. So, I mean, if you're interested in a Burt at tier 8 that fires rapidly, and of course with all of the bonuses to damage per minute recently, then yeah, I mean, it could be interesting to say the least. And then the super savings this week are the M4 improved, which is okay, nothing spectacular. The King Tiger, which is very good, but it is essentially a tech tree tank that's a premium, so earns you money instead of just playing the King Tiger in the tech tree, which is the Tiger 2. So yeah, I mean, you could buy it, but it's very expensive anyway because it is a heavy tank. They're usually like 15,000 gold or something, so you'd probably be spending 7,500 gold for one premium tank, when you could have a look at the bundles, maybe if you're interested in picking up multiple. And then the KV-222, which is also a very good tank. It's like a Soviet heavy tank. It's like a fast firing one that has fairly strong hull armor, but the turret armor is really annoying to if you are to play it because you get penned by basically everything. So yeah, if you ever see one of these on the battlefield, just shoot the turret because it's basically a stock KV-1 turret. So yeah, very easy. Of course, we talked about the contracts and then the community map testing. So the latest community map is still available for testing, so you can go into the custom games section if you've got a few platoon mates or people that you want to jump into, or you could just go to custom games and try and find a lobby and hope that they're actually running the custom games map. But it is a brand new map that Wargaming have been testing out, and it will be introduced into the game at some point. We haven't got a confirmed date, so don't get your hopes up too much. It could be, months before we even see it in the game. It could be as long as 6 months, maybe even a year. We have no no idea. But the last community map was, I believe, Vineyards. I believe that was a community map. So yeah, a really good map, Vineyards. So hopefully this one goes in the same vein. And then the shptk, it's kind of your 2 weeks left if you want to actually purchase this one. You've got the tank trading event, which I highly recommend you avoid. The premium bonus at the minute is for the Progetto M4065, which is the medium tank at tier 10. Very good one, and I highly recommend you grind towards it if you've got the time, because you'll earn 50% more XP in all of the tanks leading up to it, including the tier 10. And you'll get 50% bonus to your silver when playing all of the vehicles leading up to it. That's the same for the Polish heavy tank, the 60TP, and all of the tanks before it, from tier 5 to tier 10. It doesn't count tier 3 and tier 4. So, you know, I mean, it doesn't make much of a difference because you'd probably only play like 6 games in both of those. And then the Western Alliance, you can pick up the MAAGS as part of the premium bonus as well for the Cold War players. Of course, if you've seen my live stream recently, we made a little bit of a meme of the pink mouse as part of the camo that they've brought into the game, and it's available for you to actually check out yourself. You can get this orange camo, you can get the green one, you can get a bright pink and white one, or you can pick the white and kind of light blue and black camo. So they're all in the game right now. You can have a look. They're kind of interesting. And yeah, you can certainly have some really garishly looking tanks. So yeah, I mean, make of that what you will. Long haul still in the game, and community streams as usual on the Monday or Tuesday right now. So when you watch this video, it's probably live, so you can have a look and jump on. Or alternatively, on Friday, you can have a look at the weekly assault, which is basically like the preview that Wargaming do over on twitch.tv /what console, I think it is. So yeah, you can have a look at those. Otherwise, you can join me back on Friday or Saturday for the news update, where I cover it all, much like this one, and hopefully that keeps you up to date with the latest. And then finally, we have the Discord patch notes that Wargaming have released as well. So the patch notes, what do we have this week? Well, last week, I guess we'll cover the previous week, since if you've kind of missed out on the game or you want to know what happened, we had Airfield returning, although I literally don't think I've played the map yet, even though it's been out for a week, and I've played quite a few games on live stream. We probably played like 20 games or something like that, and I didn't get the map once, I don't believe. Obviously the new camos, like we talked about, there was bonus quests for earning XP and silver for completing quests. We have, of course, the trade-in event, which, as I say, you probably shouldn't take advantage of. The premium bonus, of course, like we mentioned. And of course, next week we have the Cold War premium, the Chieftain Hybrid 120, which is out right now. So this is the content for this week, the Lunar New Year. So that's available till the 7th of February, where you can pick up that free vehicle if you want one. And Lunar New Year sales as well. So they're available for the next week or so. Then we've got the Mercenary contracts, and then this is the kind of interesting bit, which is the Cold War matchmaking test. So what Wargaming have said here is that they're testing the pairs-based matchmaker that you're already familiar with in World War II. So what Wargaming are trying to do is pair up, for example, teams are matched perfectly by tank era, and teams are best match by tank class. So what does that actually mean? Well, if, for example, you have 5 tier 10s on your game, if this was World War II, obviously in era 1, for example, you might have like the era 1 top tier vehicle, then you've got era 1 medium tier vehicle, and then era 1 bottom tier vehicle in that era, if you know what I mean. And essentially what it will try and do is, one, match you up so that, for example, if you had 5 top tiers in the era 1, you'd have 5 top tiers on the enemy team, and then in the middle category you might have 5 middle tier tanks in your kind of era and on your team, and then they'll have 5. So it basically splits them between the teams, or at least that's what Wargaming are hoping to happen, but I have no idea if this is actually going to work. It is, of course, a test, and it could all change after a week and they go, no, this didn't work, and back to the drawing board. But essentially I think what they're trying to do is make it a little bit easier to jump into games and have more balanced games. But I mean, it's been like 8 or 9 years of World of Tanks console, and it's still not been done. So yeah, make of that what you will. And then option 2 is imperfect match. So if you had like 5 medium tanks and 1 to 3 heavies or something like that. So yeah, platoons should be as evenly distributed as possible. So they'll try and actually implement so that if, for example, if you have 3 platoons on one team, you'll have 3 platoons on the enemy team. If you had 3 platoons of 3 people, you'd have 3 platoons of 3 people. You know, they're just trying to match it up as closely as possible. I think that's what they're going with. But whether or not that'll be the case in reality, because of the matchmaking struggles that you might see late at night, it probably won't work 100%, but fingers crossed it does help you guys out on Cold War when you do decide to play. And lights are also mirrored perfectly across teams, so if one side has 2 lights, the other side should have exactly 2 lights as well, which makes the light YOLO rush slightly easier in the game, since you should actually match up 1 for 1 essentially. And then we have the questions. So this is always an interesting part where Wargaming answer the questions that they choose to answer. So the first one, can you change how the tank info box works in the HUD? Sometimes it shows a different tank's info further back and not the one I'm looking at. So they're going to make some changes in the very near future. So essentially, if you look at a tank, it will show you what tank you're shooting at. I mean, I think I disabled this because I just didn't find it relevant at all. From what I can remember, I think you can disable it. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a shade of difference to me. I already know what tank I'm shooting at because it says it above the tank that you're shooting at, telling you, it's a chieftain, it's got this much hit points. I don't need to look at the actual info tab because it's right there in front of you. But I mean, I guess it should be in the game where you actually, when you are looking at a tank, it should come up with the tank that you're looking at. Why there are only 4 Era 3 premiums and only 2 available for purchase. So Cold War is still relatively new, and there's Era 3 eras to focus on, and Era 3 are the most expensive, so they're less due to the cost of those as we try to make tanks that are more affordable. Can you add more commander contracts? So that's an interesting idea, but we do offer them in season and in earn ops. However, I'm not against it. So I mean, I don't really see the point in them developing this out. I think that there's no real need for that. There's no real want for it. I think that's just one person maybe asking the question. It would be good if they had a bigger development team, but World of Tanks console is always quite small comparatively to the PC version. So you're not really going to get all of these small minor quality of life and changes like that. So I'd much rather them focus on bigger things, but it is a good idea, it just probably won't ever happen. Black tanks for Cold War when? We are very early into 2023 and we usually do black tanks for Black Friday. I would love a black Abrams, but there's nothing I can share at this time. I mean, maybe that will come later on in the year. Any hint on the next Cold War line? So they're a bit of the way off, so no hint can be given at the moment. So it doesn't look like there's a new Cold War line coming in for a few months, or potentially the first 3 months of the year, potentially. Don't really know. Maybe they're focusing on trying to get those double-barreled tanks out, since they've been saying that they would get them for years. But you never know. Maybe we'll see them this year. I don't hold out too much of a hope. What else do we have? Well, what's Westfield's win percentage or percentage in the map rotation? So we're working to get a percentage system back in the matchmaking rotation, but currently it's what's been played recently will be the max. It's what's been played least played recently will be the next map. So what Wargaming is saying is that if, for example, you played Steps one map, the next map should not be Steps, but unless there's been like a fail in the matchmaker, maybe there's not enough matches going on, maybe you'd end up back in a Steps match, but you should not play Steps. And then, you know, the previous match that you last played would be slightly more increase in percentage, then the map previously to that would be slightly higher in percentage, and then all the way back to the very back one, it should then give you basically whatever it was. So it's all worked off of percentages, and yeah, just trying to make it a little bit smoother so you're not playing the same map every single time, which I feel like console actually gets fairly well. I don't think it's very bad in terms of that. Just would like to see more of the maps in the game like we used to have. And then when is the next on track? No dates as of yet, but none for January. So we're not going to get an on track event for January, which kind of sucks. But then there is only like 2 weeks left anyway. Sharpshooter contract when? Most likely next year. Wow. So that is a big statement. So we won't be seeing the tier 9 sharpshooter contract for the Mercenary line until next year. That's actually mad. Can we get a reforge on a premium tank? We are looking at premiums that need a bit of love, so yes, please do look at some of the Chinese premiums. I mean, there's tons of them that are just absolutely sucky right now, so it'd be nice to see those get buffed in World of Tanks. Can we get a standard 2D Commander's customization so we can choose a different image? I think it would be a large UI undertaking, so no plans for this. Yeah, I mean, that would be good. Are you adding any more skins for tier 10? Yes, we have some coming this month. I'm looking forward to the new skins. As always, customizations are always super kind of easy developments that Wargaming can do, but are also really nice to have in the game as a player, because if you've got all of the tanks in the game and you've been looking at them for the last however many days that you've actually played World of Tanks for actual in-game time, then it is nice to actually have something else. You don't have to buy them. They're just nice to be there, and it means that we don't have to have like beyond overpowered premiums all of the time, since Wargaming can make a little bit of money off of them without having to actually affect any gameplay, and of course not have to throw the dice to be able to balance a premium tank, of which we know exactly what Wargaming are like when they do that. And any chance we could shoot incoming missiles? So they did prototype that, but there was a lot of technical limitations, so they didn't go with it. I mean, I can see why. I just think it would be annoying to actually implement, but yeah, it's not going to happen. Is it possible to give all the World War II mediums manual hydraulic suspensions? Anything's possible, but would this be beneficial? It's something we would have to ask the player base. In my personal opinion, no, because then you completely remove the point of having hydraulic suspension in certain vehicles, things like the UDES 1516. That's what makes the tank fun and interesting to play. So don't bother removing that and making it a feature for all mediums, because what would be the point in playing those vehicles when you could just play like, an Object 430U that for some reason now has godly armor because you can use the hydraulic suspension and have ridiculous angling and gun depression. Yeah, just please no, let's not do that, please. And then could you increase the commander skills from 9 to 12? No plans for this, as we've made all the skills more powerful and decided to keep them at 9. Yeah, I mean, I would like to just see more skills, more diverse skills, and have some new ones, because it's been kind of boring not having so many. A lot of the times you'll be picking the same 9 skills, or maybe like the same 10 skills. Like there's very few differences in which ones you'd get at 9. So it would be nice for Wargaming to release a whole like load of new skills that just have something extra. Even if they're like super unique, you'll find that certain tanks will utilize those skills that you might think, why on earth is anyone going to be having like, I don't know, for example, increased, damage to tracks. Like, for example, if you had an equipment that allows you to deal 30% more damage to enemy tracks, well, you might think, oh, that's pretty bad. But if you're in something like a medium, maybe that would be really cool to have, and it might be something slightly different to what you'd have with, like, your rapid loading, your born leader, your sixth sense, all of these extra perks that pretty much everyone uses. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see people be able to use more unique, novel, interesting builds than what we currently have. So that's my consensus of the questions that Wargaming have. And of course, if I've missed anything, if I've misinterpreted anything, let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, I'm very interested to see what you guys think. Do you think having more skills would be kind of interesting? And can you think of any ideas that you would like to see as skills? And maybe I can actually suggest it to Wargaming, and maybe they'll actually do something like that in the future. But of course, we've got to flesh out these ideas before presenting them. Otherwise, Wargaming are just going to go, what do you even mean? You want, to be able to ammo rack people double the chance of ammo racking someone. Like, yeah. So fingers crossed. Yeah, I see what you guys have to say, and of course let me know what you think of the new tanks as well. It was a really interesting news week and quite a bit of information, and of course don't forget you can always go back in the video if you missed out on something or you want to check something else out. But yeah, other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I hope you enjoy your time on World of Tanks this week, and I'll join you back in tomorrow's Chieftain video. I'll see you there. Goodbye.